All right. Hey, good morning, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing today? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. No, this is a great pleasure here. And thank you so much for sending me a copy of 8 Days Till Sunrise. I enjoyed the heck out of that. I got a lot of questions about it, but we're both here in Colorado. We're enjoying some nice weather for a change. It hasn't snowed in at least 3 days now.
Yep. Snowing 2 days ago and 70 degrees today. Standard Colorado weather.
Yeah, no, yeah. 3 days ago it was snowing, and then I was working a track meet yesterday. We were all of us standing around, either as officials or coaches, saying how nice the weather was. The kids are all complaining about overheating, so go figure. So, but on a beautiful day like this, I think it's exemplary or a good example of 8 days till sunrise. Kind of indicates sunshine and everything. And 8 days, of course, represents the 8 days you were in a coma. And
Mhm.
we've got a lot to talk about here. But why don't we start talking off right out from the get-go about your accident and what happened? You described in very gory detail in your book.
Yeah, it's a little shocking and make chins drop when you describe it. But so I was skydiving and I was an experienced skydiver, a couple hundred jumps, and so it was an ordinary Saturday. I'm a third jump of the day. I'm coming in for a landing on a field I'd landed on, hundreds of times before, and I'm 150 feet off the ground. Huge wind comes off the mountains, hits me in the back, picks me up, and slams me violently forward. So in skydiving, you try to land into the wind because it kind of slows you down a little bit and
Similar to
makes it
what a plane
soft to
does.
land.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So so I am flying into the wind at like maybe 4 or 5 miles an hour, whatever it was, and then yeah, huge mountain or huge wind comes off the mountains, picks me up, slams me, and it's like slams you to the point where it picked me up in the harness and just like you know pushes me hard forward, and it's kind of disorienting for a second. And at 150 feet off the ground, you're like it's like 5 seconds before you land. So um, I at that point there's two options basically: try to turn because as I'm coming in, I'm going to land on the grass where I've landed hundreds of times before, but with that increased speed from that wind from behind, all of a sudden a fence is coming and an airplane hangar. So I'm not really sure whether I could land before that or not because all of a sudden I've been, my speed has been increased greatly. So you have two options: either try to turn or do nothing. So turning with a parachute, essentially you're pulling down on a handle, you collapse a portion of the parachute, that creates your parachute, a dive for your parachute, and that creates the turn. Now, if you're 2,000 feet in the air, well, then if you lose 150 feet, no big deal because you're still way above the ground. But when you're 150 feet and you do that, your parachute's not going to recover and you're going to dive directly into the ground at an increased speed. And you're probably not going to live because the ground's obviously not going to move when you hit it. So at that point, I just take a deep breath and go, okay, I'm not turning because I know what the result's going to be there, and we're going to just have to see what happens. And I wasn't really sure whether I was going to get to that fence or hopefully land on that grass. So I'm kind of counting down the seconds, and I'm at about 2 seconds, and I'm just like, I'm going way too fast. There's no way I'm landing before that fence on the grass. And it's like, prepare for impact. And it's just like, hit the fence. And it was a cattle fence. So it was a wire fence. There was like three strands to it. Hits me in the top of the chest and the abdomen. I hit it so hard, it just breaks pretty much as soon as I hit it. Just I could feel it stretch and it just smash. And then 10 feet behind it was the airplane hangar, which is a metal building that contains airplanes. And so I hit that thing head on, like probably 30 miles an hour. I black out, and so they call 911. Flight for Life helicopter picks me up, flies me down to Lakewood, which is 50 miles away from where I was, St. Anthony's Hospital for life-saving surgery because I hit so hard on my left side, 10 out of 12 ribs break, impact my heart. My heart shoots out of where it normally sits, called the pericardial sac, ends up on the right side of my chest, and it's all twisted up.
Wow.
So yeah, it's not an ordinary thing, I guess, that happens. So the surgeons
No,
eventually
typically
told
not.
me.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, life-saving surgery. Um, the doctors later tell my family, like, nobody, and this is a level one trauma center. So you're talking about they bring the worst of the worst accidents there. So they deal with all kinds of things. And they said, well, we've never even, no doctor in this hospital has ever performed this surgery on anyone before because no one ever makes it alive because I guess with the movement to your right side of your chest, something disconnects and you die instantly. So spent 8 days in a coma. I had 20 broken bones, four organs they had to fix, and 3.5 months in the hospital. where you have to relearn to walk. And then eventually, I guess to make the story short, I get out of the hospital and I ask my doctor, I say, well, when do I get to run again? He goes, run. He's like, you're too broken. You're probably never going to run. It's always going to be too painful. So I kind of said, well, we'll see. So I signed up for a triathlon, and 1 day short of the 1 year anniversary from the accident, I raced in a triathlon to prove the doctor wrong, and also just as a thank you to all the people that had helped me, and also a check to see if all the body works, because kind of my mind works as far as, well, you can't hide in a triathlon. You have to use your upper body, your lower body, your heart. So I was like, well, that'll test my whole body to see if I can maybe not be back to what I was before in terms of speed or anything, but at least be able to function and finish.
Yeah. So, your story reminds me an awful lot of a previous guest I had on this podcast named Dean Otto. He is a guy from Charlotte, North Carolina, who he was run down on his bicycle by a truck, paralyzed.
Mm.
And he ended up in the hospital. The doctor did the surgery on him. And the doctor told him, you have a 2% chance of ever walking again. And he told the doc right there, he said, Doc, you and I in 1 year are going to run a half marathon together. And the doc stood there like, yeah, right, buddy. It's kind of one of those things, very similar to the story you just told there. You also mentioned, though, almost like this doctor who looked at this guy and said, wait, this guy, he's not going to move, much less, run a half marathon. But you had the same reaction from your doctor. You mentioned how he stood over your bed and kind of stared and like, can't believe this guy's even still here. I mean, really, when your heart got pushed over, I mean, it should have disconnected everything, like you say. I don't know how
Yeah.
everything kind of hung on, but yeah, he kind of marveled at like, geez, I can't believe this guy's still breathing. And obviously, it must have been quite the story later on when you told him that you were going to do a triathlon in a year as well.
Yeah, I would get there was another doctor that did my pelvis, because I don't know, 4 orthopedic surgeons, and so I randomly saw him and he said, you should come back and just have everything checked out. And this was probably a year and a half after I do the triathlon. And I'm in his office and he says, you're making outstanding progress. Maybe I know you like to run. Maybe you should do a race. And I said, Doc, you're about 18 months late. I already did a race 18 months ago. I remember you said I couldn't do it. And so that's why I did it. So thank you for giving me that encouragement, whether you knew you were giving me encouragement or not. Um, and then besides, well, he said, well, what do you do on an ordinary basis? And I kind of told him at the time what the run volume I was doing and the biking volume. And he looked at me like, that shouldn't be really possible and he's the one who fixed the pelvis that was completely destroyed.
Yeah.
So I was just like, well, I don't like people telling me my limits. It's like the negativity actually, and it wasn't just him. There were other therapists and things like that along the way, um, that kind of encouraged me, because they say I can't. And I'm just like, well, we'll see. I'm going to prove you wrong. I wouldn't say that out loud. I just put it in the back of my mind and say,
Oh
all
yeah.
right, we're gonna find a way to get this done. Because the reality is, they see hundreds or thousands of different patients, and there's so many different results on that spectrum of how you can recover. And there might be someone on the one side that maybe isn't really into doing rehab, or someone on the other side, more like myself, that's completely obsessed with doing rehab and getting back to and has a reason or a goal at the end that drives you forward. Um, so sometimes that negativity actually encouraged me more than the positive talk that you would hear from people of like, you're doing great. I was like, I don't want to hear I'm doing great. I don't want to hear that you're terrible and you're never going to come back. And I'm like, all right, well, we'll see. Because the same thing happened while I was in the rehab hospital. Um, so I realized on like day 3 of the rehab hospital that they haven't asked me what my goals were before I got out of the hospital. I'm just like, that seems odd. Maybe they're making up their
Hmm.
own goals based
Yeah.
on their
Interesting.
initial assessment, right?
Right.
So so day 3, I say, well, you guys never asked me what my goal was. Um, and my goal is to walk out of this hospital. And they look at me like puzzled, like, yeah, that we're preparing you to go home in a wheelchair.
Right.
And I was like, well, that's great. You're preparing for the wheelchair. I'll go along with the program. I'm thinking in my mind, and but I'm just like, the ultimate goal is to walk out of here, and I'm going to do it. So I kind of just quiet and never brought it up again. And then eventually I walked out of there on my own. And there's I had to be lucky that the bones were actually healed to be able to even stand on my feet again. But yeah, it's that kind of the limitations people put on you. It's like, if I listened to them, I wouldn't have been as far along as I was. And I
No.
and
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I want to ask you about why you think that is, because I have a persistent theory or advice, whatever you want to call it. People who've listened to this podcast know that I tell them all the time when doctors give you a time frame, it's based on the average lazy American who will show up for their PT appointment once or twice a week, probably not do anything else in between. And I as an example, I ruptured my Achilles and I'm told, well, you're out for 9 to 12 months. And I'm the knucklehead who's in the gym in 3 days and I'm working on it like crazy. And I was running on it again 11 weeks later. And it's the same kind of thing. I went to see the doc at 11 weeks and he said, yeah, okay, I guess you can run. You seem to be coming along pretty well. I know the way you are. And I said, what about skiing? Because I'd be in a boot anyway. And he says, yeah, okay. And I said, well, good, because I did last week. You know, 10 weeks after surgery. So, but I have a persistent theory or belief that these doctors give you a timeline based on somebody else, not if you are definitely motivated. Now, so kind of a two-part question I have here for you, Jason, is one is like, why do you think that persists? Maybe all the doctors you've seen have seen so many cases of people who are just very negative and say, okay, I'll accept what you're saying, doc. But also, you mentioned yourself you had those negative times. You were in the hospital kind of wondering, like, where is this all leading? And am I going to be that invalid in the wheelchair? Or, what's my point in continuing? You had a lot of down times, a lot of dark times. Anybody would, of
Absolutely.
course. So kind of two questions I have there for you.
Yeah. Well, I think as far as the predictions, and this is just obviously my personal opinion of going through the medical system, I think one, a doctor doesn't want to tell you something that might not be true, really, because in some ways it reflects back on them. If they said, "Hey, recovery is going to be in 8 weeks," and it takes you 16 weeks, or they tell you, your arm's going to work perfectly again, and it doesn't. So I think it's kind of tempered expectations.
Mm,
Uh, is probably part of it. Two, the doctor doesn't necessarily spend enough time with you to know your mentality. Um, the nurses and the physical therapists along the way are spending far more time with you and know more about you on a personal level, where a doctor, if it's a surgeon, well, in my case, I came in emergency situations, but the reality is, they do surgery on you. There's some quick follow-ups, and you might only be in their office 5 or 10 minutes, and a lot of it's just them reciting to you what's going on, and you're trying to think of questions that you have. Or I used to bring in a piece of paper because you would forget, because you're kind of getting all this medical information that you're trying to digest. And certainly I'm not a medical professional, so I'm like, well, what does all that mean? And then I'm trying to ask my question. So I think it's they don't know enough about the person when they predict, and they're just
sure.
that's my opinion.
Right.
um yeah, and they can't possibly know what you've done before, and your mentality, and what you've built up over all these years of your foundation of who you are in that short amount of time. So yeah, but I would say sometimes the best thing they can tell you is I can't. But that might not work for everybody. So
Sure.
that limits other people.
Right.
So it could be good and bad. I guess it's depend, or you just create what you want your narrative to be, and you take whatever somebody says, whether it's positive or negative, and turn it into your own motivation. So I think that's part of the the mental part of the game too.
Yeah. And, as a coach myself, say I got a team full of kids, if you just coached every kid the same way, you're not going to get good results out of every kid. You have to know them well enough to know who responds to that positive reinforcement and who needs that, like, hey, you can't do this, you suck kind of mentality. I mean, it sounds negative, but there's some people who do respond to that. So that's where having that personal relationship helps tremendously. And a lot of doctors, as you say, in our medical system simply don't have the time for that.
Absolutely. It's just patient after patient. And I'm not blaming the doctor, certainly. It's,
No,
it's just how the system works. It's just they don't have the personal time to give to you because they have however many more patients going along, and they're pressured by money and everything else to run their office and be in business and all that. And the insurance company wants their money. So yeah, it's just the way it works. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm lucky enough to have a general practitioner who I've got a couple of personal connections to just by odd means. One even was I played soccer goalkeeper for many years, and I reached down, pick up a ball that was shot to me, and there's this guy running right into my face there, to see if I'm going to bobble the ball, give him a rebound. I look up, it's like, Dr. Rydberg, is that you? It's like he's playing forward on the other team against me. So, funny stuff like that. But obviously the title of your book, 8 Days Till Sunrise, refers to those 8 days you were in a coma. And it's, again, talking about mindset. You had some really interesting experiences while in a coma. I think a lot of listeners may not believe that. What? He's in a coma? We had some experiences here. I mean, you had a few nightmares, for want of a better term for it.
Yeah, it was a pretty brutal time for sure. And it's so and I was intubated in a coma. So essentially meaning they put me into a coma with all my injuries because they didn't
Right.
want me to move around or anything like that. So your mind is really moving the entire time. It's not like, because I've been under anesthesia where for additional surgeries where it's kind of like you're blacked out, you wake back and you don't remember anything during that surgery. This is completely different in that. So my mind was active, and it was just like nightmare after nightmare after nightmare, hundreds. Um, and see, the odd part about when you're in this coma, so if you in a normal life, you have a nightmare, you wake up, it might be disturbing, but you wake up and you're like, well, this is just a nightmare. When you're in a
Right.
coma and you can't wake up, it's like it almost can become your reality because there is no other reality other than what you're living in that coma. And I'm sure medications and all those other things, you know, uh, add to the confusion of your mind in the coma. Um, so kind of all these nightmares are similar theme in that it's like people are there, they're not willing to help me, they're leaving me for dead. And so it's kind of deflating. And because the reality of it is not that wasn't the reality on the outside, everyone was helping me and putting my body back together. But on the inside, it's I guess it's your mind playing tricks on you of
Yeah.
that you're no one cares and you're not going to be helped and you have to it's like you're indirectly being asked, do you want to live, and with all this negativity going on with all these nightmares, because it makes it seem like no one cares. And and then you realize kind of after a while you're just like, no, this is just all temptation trying to tempt me to give up or give in or not care. It's like no one really would have known if I gave up mentally on inside that coma and just passed away, but I would have known that I gave up. And at some point you kind of go, no, all this negative self-talk is just, that's not true. No people care that I want to be alive and I'm coming back from this. And you just build up and get so tired of that negativity that you go, I'm busting out of this and I'm coming back. And I yelled that out in the middle of those nightmares. And then after I yelled that out, it's like they kind of just went away. And then the next thing I remember was opening my eyes and seeing that doctor looking down at me and going, "You're lucky to be alive." You're like, "That's a crazy way to wake up."
Right. Oh man, yeah. How do you react to something when you wake up and hear that? I mean, again, I mean, obviously you remembered smacking into the building, but not a whole
Yeah,
lot much after that. So, yeah, obviously you had no idea the extent of your injuries at that moment.
yeah. So I opened my eyes. At first, I'm like blinded because my eyes hadn't been open in 8 days,
Yeah.
and the huge sun's coming through the window in the morning. So my eyes adjust. So I didn't even see the doctor at first, and I look up and I can't see very well because I generally wear contacts. So and my vision is terrible. So I look up and this guy's, just see a white coat looking down at me, and I was like, who is this guy? And so he tells me that, and then the first thing that comes out of my mouth is, I just said, you're lucky to be alive. I said, well, thanks for helping me. And then I reach out my arm and open my hand and give him a little high five, and he just like gives me a crazy look, like, a high five. Like I guess a lot of people just don't wake up and give people high fives, but I can't say I didn't. My brain wasn't even working correctly at that point, so it was just default mode of like to say thank you and just like give him a high five. It was just like I didn't really think about it before. Like I should give this guy a high five. It was just like that was just like what came out of me. I don't know.
Yeah, that's pretty bizarre. You're right. And I mean, it was a good thing you had one arm that worked anyway, because you couldn't have done it with the other arm, right?
No, the other arm was pretty much incapacitated, and the one I picked up, I found out when I picked up my arm that was broken too. But the elbow and shoulder was good enough that I could actually pick up my arm. But I think he took it softly, like, well, let's not slap this guy's arm too hard. He has a broken
Yeah,
wrist as
or
well.
just
But
break right off, right?
yeah,
Oh man, geez. So you were in the hospital in the ICU for quite a while.
yeah.
Without giving away too much of your book, I mean, could you just kind of give us a overview of your journey there from ICU to regular room to rehab hospital? The kind of the journey, and The people who are around you, from your, family, friends, etc., who are there kind of accompanying you on this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first person on the scene, so my parents lived on the East Coast, so they get the call to come out here and fly right away. But the first person that's on scene is my friend Lori, who's my emergency contact. So she gets that call to come to, like, horrible accident. Uh, so she couldn't even drive herself to the hospital. She was so overcome by emotion. She shows to the hospital, can't walk because she's so nervous. Chaplain comes out and she thinks I died between the time she got the call from the hospital to when she showed up. And chaplain's like, no, 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 he's not dead. I just need to prepare you for what you're about to see
Mm.
because it's going to be hard. So they bring her up to the room and I'm in, laying in the coma and broken. And the pictures in the book of actually of me in the coma on day 2, I think it was. Um,
And I'm
so
sure it
she's
doesn't give nearly a full impression of how bad off you looked.
no, they had the gown over the top of me, so
Yeah,
it covers up
right.
so a lot of the bad parts.
Yeah.
Um, So she's sitting there and kind of going back to what you said about the doctor. So the doctor comes in, the surgeon who put my heart back. So he comes in, she's sitting there, and he's staring at me for like as she would say, an uncomfortably long amount of time. And so this is the day after the surgery. And at some point, she's getting more and more nervous, and she says, you know, you're staring at him for a really long time. Like, is something wrong? Like, should I know something is about to happen? And he turns to her and says, I'm staring at your friend because I can't even believe he's alive. Like, there's no way he should have made it off the field alive. He should have never made it to the, you know, on the helicopter ride out here. He should have never made it through the surgery. Like, he's like, no one survives what he just survived. So, I mean, she gets that news and she's like, well, at least he's not, dying right now. So I guess that was relief for her in some way.
Yeah.
But, but so I wake up from the coma and like you were saying, I didn't know what was wrong with me because I hit the building and I blacked out. There's a couple things I said that they later told me I said that but I had no idea. It was like I was kind of on default mode. Um, and actually, what I said was the first people that came upon me and started talking to me, I said, "Don't call anyone. Just give me a minute. I'll be okay." And so that was kind of I was on default mode. It's like survival. It's like
Right.
one of those things when you get hurt and you want to get up as soon as possible because you figure if you got up, you're not really as hurt as you think you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I think what my body was doing is in survival mode. Now, there's no way I was standing up, but luckily they didn't pay attention and called 911. So I wake up from that coma and I have no idea what my injuries are, and I'm kind of my eyes open. Doctor leaves. I look down and I see um, all kind of bandages on my chest, and it feels like 50 pounds is pushing down on my chest because of they put my heart back and wired my chest back together, and it felt like 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound sack. I'm like, I think they wired me back too hard because but it was probably because I was so swollen, because now I could breathe, but I couldn't really breathe that well because you couldn't like expand your lungs all the way because of all the swelling.
Well,
And
and your ribs are broken, so that never feels good.
no, no, yeah, 11 broken ribs plus they saw me down the center.
Yeah.
Um, so it was so you're scared to try to even take a full breath because you're just like, I don't know if I'll be able to inflate my lungs again. So you're just kind of taking these really short breaths. And I see machines are like 360 degrees around my bed, all making beeping noises, like 5 or 6 IVs hanging. I see all these tubes coming out of my chest and my abdomen, draining blood. And so you're just like, what is going on? And then the nurse comes in and is just like, uh, just don't move, okay? And I'm just completely numb at that point from head to toe because I don't know if I'm paralyzed. I don't know what's going on. And I look there, I'm like, okay, I won't try to move. And you're just like, yeah, no problem. And so that was and little by little, my family would start telling me my injury. So at that point, my parents were there in the room. When I woke up, they were in the room. They had already flown out and been there for a couple of days while I was in the coma before I woke up. And so little by little, they would tell me what my injuries were, and I was so whacked out, I would forget what injuries. I was like, "Is my leg broken again?" They're like, "Yes, your leg's broken again." And they're like, "Is my arm broken?" And you're like, "Just look down. Yes, it's broken."
Yeah, they
Um,
didn't just like hand you a restaurant menu and say, "Hey, these are all the items you have that are broken right here." And if you need to refer to it at any time, oh yeah, the leg's broken over there. Yeah, item 6. Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They don't tell you that, and yeah, it was basically my parents telling me what was going on, and So early on, they told me, they said, we just want to like, there's no brain. I had, yeah, a concussion, but they said no brain injury, no spinal injury, which is obviously some things that can't be reversed. So
Yeah.
you're kind of like, luckily that's not the case. And but here early on, even my dad, so he's sitting next to the bed, and this is early on after I wake up, and he says, this is going to be just like one of your races. So I'm kind of still out of it from all the medication he's on, but so I take that in, but I kind of, it stayed with me for a long time, because in that way, when he said that, I thought, I clicked into, uh, everything's fixable. As long as I worked hard and did what I knew how to do, because he's been around for me doing lots of races, that if I think of it as a race, getting a little bit better all the time, that's going to lead to a huge improvement. So I don't know if he knew all, by just by saying that, he knew all of how my brain was going to work when he said that. But early on, that came right in my head. I was like, oh, I just need to work hard, and I'll fix whatever's wrong. So that was a huge help along the whole journey when he said that early on.
Yeah, you already had kind of a template in your head of how your process getting ready for a race and between races, how all that works, so you could use that same kind of template for this recovery.
Yeah, it was amazingly similar to, training for a race that you have to train for months and months, or for. So I had that experience. So yeah, I easily tapped into how that works. It was different, like obviously broken bones, but the mentality was exactly the same. The process was the same, and I was used to that. So I was super lucky that I had that foundation before ever this had ever happened. Um, so beyond that, so it's 10 weeks. I really can't move at all except my hand like this. It's like to put my food in my mouth, because everything else was just, destroyed. There's like, you can't move. Once in a while,
Yeah.
they'd pick me up with a crane called a Hoyer lift.
Yep.
It was basically, they put a net under you because they don't want to put any weight on any particular part of your body. They want to distribute the weight across your body and lift you, and then would put me in a really padded wheelchair. But it's not like I could go anywhere in the wheelchair. It was just like, your digestive system works better if you're sitting up because of gravity and things like that. So they want to get you sitting up. Plus, it's your heart rate, and it's strange if you're laying down for a long time, because if all of a sudden they sit you up, you can have lightheadedness, and because your just body's not used to it.
Right.
Similar to if you do a triathlon and you swim, when you get out of the swim and you start running on land to get to your bike, you're oftentimes lightheaded, and because your body's just was exercising and laying flat for so long, and all of a sudden you're standing up, and so I kind of knew that feeling.
Yeah.
um, but so as time goes, so 8 10 weeks I can't really move. I basically just sit there. But to me, the 10 weeks, it was lowest part of my life, most difficult thing, because uh, I had what do you call defense mechanisms, as far as like when things were hard in life. You can go out for a run and get an endorphin rush, or I was jumping out of the airplane. We can call it avoidance or a challenge. I mean, it functioned in lots of ways, the challenges I've done over my life. But it took all that away and made me lay there, because I was so used to living life at kind of 100 miles an hour all the time.
Yeah.
And that's how I dealt with things, for healthy or not healthy or whatever you want to call it. But when you laid there and I couldn't do any of those things, you couldn't avoid, you know, past things you went through. It's like you kind of reassessed your life and said, you know, there were a lot of good things that happened, but I never thought about all those things. I thought about the things I needed to improve on. Similar to when you get done with a race, you're just like, I didn't think of all the good parts of it. I just thought of the things I need to get better for the next time. It was similar kind of mentality. It's like, I didn't spend enough time with loved ones. I was working too many hours. I was distracted. I lost purpose in life. And and it was hard to lay there and think of all this. And it's like, I almost died, but I got a second chance, so I could get better at all those things I wish I was better at.
Right. Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of you got a lot of news lately of Aaron Rodgers doing that darkness retreat for 3 days. Did you hear about that?
I didn't. I've heard of those darkness things before. You don't eat, and you don't, just complete darkness, and just you're with yourself.
You do eat, but
Oh,
I
okay.
had first heard about this through an author I've read, Colin O'Brady. He's the guy who did the first solo unsupported trek of Antarctica, and he holds the record for getting to the summit of all 50 states in like 37 days. But in any case, there's this compound out in Oregon. These people have these huts out in the forest, and you go out there and you're just total darkness, no contact, no sound, nothing. I mean, I think they slide food in through a slot in a door every day, but you just have to kind of, I guess, feel your way to the door and go grab your food, but you're just alone with your thoughts. And it's kind of funny because Aaron Rodgers did it for 3 days, and that's where everybody in the world seems to have learned about this. And of course, Colin O'Brady did it for a week, but I'm such a hyperactive individual. I don't know how I would deal with just being inside my own head for much, for a week, even 3 days. But, you were kind of there inside your own head, as you said, for 10 weeks. I would think that would be, at least for me, be an incredible challenge because, yeah, I'm like you. It's like, I got to get out. I got to be active. I mean, I'm one of those people who, my days are just filled wall to wall all the time. And so to actually have to sit there and study yourself, so to speak, would be a tremendous challenge for me. And, it sounds like you made the best of it, so to speak.
Yeah, and I would say that apparently for Aaron Rodgers, that retreat didn't work because he went to the Jets. So I'm not sure why
No,
that
I think he definitely got steered in the wrong direction. Yeah.
he should have stayed with the Packers. But no, it was incredibly difficult for me, but it was the best thing that could have happened for me to be able to it took away everything, but like thinking about that, and that also takes you down a dark path. Um,
Yes.
and I kind of at some point it was because I was laying there for so long. I felt like because I was a person that always wanted to take action, I felt like if I could take control of things, then I could get back to where I wanted to. But because they said you can't move right now, it felt like I couldn't do anything positive to come back from that. So I started kind of
Yeah.
get that helpless feeling, a lot of guilt, because I'm the one who decided to jump out of the airplane all those times, and then my family's sitting there, and I'm just like, no, they never blame me for any of it because there's like, it's an accident, it happened. But the reality is, I felt horrible because I'm like, I can't imagine what it must have been like for them to get that call. Your son might not live. You better get out here to Denver, or telling my siblings, or coming in for the first time, seeing me in a coma, broken, not moving, breathing tube down my throat. So I felt,
Right.
horribly guilty. Um, and when you have nothing else to do but sit there all day, you're just constantly, on that guilt, guilt, guilt. And, the therapist would come in. And at this point, so they would move my left arm. So it's cast from shoulder to wrist. And I couldn't move it myself. So she would pick it up and move it like an inch. And I'm on the verge of passing out from the pain. It's so bad. It's called a vasovagal response, like your body's defense mechanism, like don't move your arm because, but if you don't move your arm, you'll never get that flexibility or
Oh yeah.
anything back. So you have to push through it. Um, so I'm just laying there. I'm just like, if I can't even get my arm moved by somebody else by an inch, you start questioning yourself, like, how am I going to come back from the rest of this? Um, and then they send in the psychiatrist, who I would say is either a genius or completely incompetent. I guess you could decide for yourself. Uh, so he comes in. They see me going down a spiral of, just not doing well. Send him in. He comes in, and he sits down and says, what are you going through? I said, I kind of feel a little bit helpless, and I, feel a tremendous amount of guilt for all what happened. And so he starts just naming off antidepressants. The only reason I knew the name is from like TV commercials and what those things are. Uh,
And all the negative effects, right?
right. And so I had never taken antidepressants before. So I don't really know much about them other than what, I've read about and seen on TV. So I'm just like, and he said, what do you think about taking that? I'm like, first of all, why is this guy asking me why my medical opinion on antidepressants? Because I don't really know anything about them. And it's just like, to me, it came off as this guy's trying to take a shortcut. Because my thought was the psychiatrist comes in, gives you coping mechanisms for what you're going through. He's like, this what you're going through is normal. You're going to go through ups and downs, and your mind's going to go through places. Didn't do any of that. He just going straight for the drugs. Like, let's make this guy numb, or I said,
Yeah.
what is it going to do? He's like, take out the highs and lows. I'm like, brilliant idea here. It's like, you know, my thought was to build back, you need to hit a bottom. And I knew that. And I'm just like, no, I need to beat myself up and make myself feel terrible at myself because that's how my brain works. And then when I feel myself terrible enough, then I'm going to, be reborn, and then I'm going to head back up. But you need to feel the pain of all that first, because if you're going to change, you don't change when you're comfortable. It's change when you're completely uncomfortable with your current situation.
Very true. Yeah.
So I just look at him. So this guy lasts 2 minutes. So all what I just said lasts 2 minutes. I look at him. I go, get out of my room. Don't ever come back. And he tucks his tail between his legs and walks out of my room. And he never did come back. So I say, incompetent because he didn't do anything for me other than, but he really did, because his negative self-talk lit the fire. Because I'm just like, I can't believe this guy's coming in here and trying to tempt me to take the easy way out. I was like, man, he came in the wrong room if that's what he thought. So he
Well,
just,
you know what? He may have been brilliant. He may have been smug enough to think that like that's what I wanted to do to him. I wanted to get him pissed off because I know it's going to light a fire under his butt. Or, it is possible the guy just walked away and said, "This guy's an idiot. He doesn't listen to good advice, so screw him too." It
right.
could have been one
I,
of those possibilities too.
I would have given him credit because I'm like, there's no way this guy in 2 minutes could have, or maybe he was brilliant in 2 minutes. He could figure me out, my mentality or all that
Right.
kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, probably not. But the point was, and he said, I was just like, no, this guy's not controlling me. He's not going to limit me. I'm not taking the easy road. It's like, I know why I'm here. I know why I'm laying here. And then things started to change after that. I really was like, well, I'd had to find something to do, because I'm like, I need to create momentum, because momentum is the best way to come back from anything. I was like, I might not be able to move right now, but I was like, what are things? It's like, I got to stop grieving the things I can't do and think of things I can do. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, and finally, my mind finally felt like it was clear for the first time. And so I start going, oh, I'm thinking about journeys of the past. I'm thinking about races I've done in the past, what it was like from the beginning to the end of where, you start nowhere close to where you need to be on race day. And it's just like you just need to chip away every day. And sometimes you can't even tell the difference between one day or another, because it's not obvious, if you're training for 10 months, those small incremental changes you're doing every day, you're making every day. And sometimes you regress on a day. So I was just like, you're not going to jump up and be okay in a day or a week or a month. I was just like, all you need to do is concentrate on getting like incremental changes, the smallest change. And that if you do that every day, then over 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, you're going to see a huge difference. So
Right.
find something you could do. And I was like training my mind, and my sister gave me an iPad, and she loaded all kinds of stuff on it. Um, and I found, like, with the algorithm, I would look at one video and I'd come across something about somebody went, like, I think it was like the long trail in like Vermont or New Hampshire. I forget what it was, but they were trying to set the record for trail running it. So I watched that, and that leads to another one. And it was like all mentality based videos of all these journeys people were going through. I'm like, I'm just going to watch one of those every day and tap into what they're doing and their highs and lows and everything like that. And it's going to help me, because I've gone through the highs and lows myself before, but it's nice to get someone who's also doing it as like a secondary reinforcement.
Right.
Um, so I started doing that every day. So I started just doing mental training, because that's kind of all I could do at that point. And then like pain was happening. So I'm just like, I need to get this pain under control, because the reality is they would come in every couple hours and go, hey, do you want pain medication? How are you feeling? What are you on that 1 to 10 scale of pain? And I tried to avoid it because I didn't really like pain medication, because it felt like it was taking me away from the things I should be thinking about when I'm laying in that bed. And so I was just like, I would take it a little bit if I really needed it. And then I was like, from that day forward, I was like, there's no more pain medication, because eventually they're not going to let me have it
Yeah.
if I need it. And it's not like my body was not going to have pain as more of it started working. I was like, I need to mentally get through this and control pain, because it's not going away, and I can't let this stop me from getting to where I want to be. So, so that night changes everything. It's like,
Yeah.
thank you, psychiatry. And I'm not saying psychiatry is bad. I don't mean it like that. But this particular guy, uh, well, like I said, he's either a genius or incompetent. But
That's
I
right.
made him. I make him seem like a genius with the after effects of what he did. But so from there, therapist is still coming in, moving my arm, still hurts as much. But now I'm just like, I'm thinking to myself, well, if I get through today and get through tomorrow, if I get through tomorrow, I get through the next day. I'm like, it's all momentum. It's like, push
Right.
my arm as hard as you can. I don't care about how much it hurts. And I would thank her at the end. I'm like, thanks for helping me. And she'd look at me like, there's something wrong with this dude. As like, I just put him through like horrible pain, because I'd yell. It was, I mean, I'm sure everyone outside of my hospital room could hear like the yelps of
Right.
like how bad it was. But I'm just like, all right. And you get through it and you're like celebrating. You're like, yes, through another one. And then I'm on to tomorrow. And I'd have to get like psyched up the night before. It'd be like 8 o'clock at night. I'm laying by my, or like always was laying, because I couldn't get up. But I'm in my bed. I'm getting like psyched up for tomorrow, because you'd never know if they would come in at 9 a.m. or 1 p.m. It's not like I was going anywhere. They can come in whatever time they want.
Oh
But
yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just like, I'm ready. And it was just like a sporting event. You're just like, I'm getting ready for that horrible hour of pain. Um, but yeah, so I kind of changed my mentality of what I needed to do. And so from there, they cut the casts off, and then I'm in a rehab facility. And I already kind of talked about that when they said I wouldn't be able to walk out of there.
Right.
And the way I could understand, like looking back on it, you have a different point of view when you're the patient. But the reason they think I could walk out of there when they assessed me is because first day I get there, I'm laying in the bed and they want to put me in the wheelchair. So it's kind of the first time I'm not lifted by a crane into a wheelchair. And I'm so weak, I can't sit up on my own. I can't even roll over to the side on my own. That's how weak
Yeah.
I am.
Right.
I couldn't, for the first time 2 days before I get to that rehab facility, it's the first time I could open up a top of a yogurt. And that took like, and it wasn't because I broke the tab off the side because I was so strong. It was like I couldn't literally open it. And it took like 2 tries to finally open it after they took the casts off. Uh, so I'm laying there and they're basically dragging me to get into the wheelchair because I'm so weak.
Yeah.
And so I plop into the wheelchair, and then they're just like, okay, why not wheel yourself to the cafeteria?
And you're like,
So
yeah, right.
yeah, well, I make it like 10 feet because my left arm is horribly, broken and has zero strength. My right arm's not, I had the broken wrist on the other field, on the other arm, and it's not much better, but a little bit better because at least I had tricep power in that one. Um, and I found that also my left arm was basically stuck in position. I couldn't move my elbow in either direction because too much bone grew. So basically it was stuck. So you couldn't extend your arm. So I make it about 10 feet with his wheelchair, and they're just like, we're gonna wheel you the rest of the way to the cafeteria because they're like, breakfast is gonna be over if we let you
Yeah, right.
continue to
You're
try
gonna
to do what you're
starve.
doing.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So they pushed me the rest of the way. So looking back, when I predicted I was going to walk out of there, I get why they were doubting me because I couldn't even push a wheelchair 10 feet or in a straight line. Um, so little by little, what they realized was as time went on in that rehab facility, was every time they would come into my room, because you'd get 3.5 hours of rehab with the therapist, and that's all the time they had. So you had a lot of downtime. So as an endurance athlete, what do? Well, you find things to do. So every time they would come into my room, they realized I was working out on my own, finding something to do, whether it was just like wheeling around in my wheelchair, because I figured the more I did that, the stronger I would get. I'd find like little weights or like ways to make myself more flexible, like stretches. So I basically built my own exercise routine based on like their stuff. Plus, I asked them for more exercises. Plus, I would think of things in the past just in terms of how I trained. So I would think of things I could still do
Yeah.
based on past training. So I would just build up my own routine, and I would just keep on doing it all day. And I didn't know how many I was supposed to do, so I would just keep on going and going, and I'd be like, take a little rest, and like keep on doing. I was like, there's nothing else to do here. I was like, I
Right.
got to take advantage of every single minute. And my with thought was, the more I do, the better I was going to get faster, the more work that I put in. So they would come into my room and they realized like every time I see this guy, he's doing other, because they're fighting with other patients in the therapy room that don't want to do rehab or don't feel like it. It's like this guy just does whatever he wants, and every time we see him, he's doing something. Um, and so they would bring in more exercise apparatus, little dumbbells and things like this, and go, oh, have you tried this? Or this is 2 steps harder than what you're doing now. Do this now and do this, and then it's
Nice.
like building and building and building. And so I don't know if they believed I was going to eventually walk out of there after I was doing all the things I was doing, but you know, or they thought, maybe he's just happy in his own little delusional world that he's going to, come back from this and walk out of here.
Yeah, well,
Um,
let's keep him busy so he doesn't drive us any crazier.
right. He keeps stop bothering us. He's just
Yeah.
by himself. So then finally I go for more X-rays on my legs. So you only could go once a month. I guess it takes that long for them to actually tell a difference in an X-ray. So the X-raying my lower body, and so if the X-rays weren't going to be okay, and I wasn't able to try to put weight on my legs, I was definitely going home in a wheelchair. Um, or if I was cleared, then who knows what was going to happen. So I go to the doctor. He takes the X-rays and he goes, you're not fully healed. And I'm like, oh, because then I was like, man, I'm going to a wheelchair. And then he was like, but, and I'm like, but. I was like, but what? And he's like, but we're gonna allow you to put weight on your legs because you'll wind up healing faster, for bone density and things like that.
All right. So
I
cue the
said,
Rocky music now. Right.
exactly, exactly. And so going back to the hospital, and spirits are completely lifted. So that's the first day I get to see the mountains, because we know in Colorado how important it is to see the mountains, how much that can lift your spirits. So going to because the ambulance brings me to the X-rays, and it's the first time I get to see the mountains since I've been in the hospital. So this is 3 months, and
Yeah.
I'm just like in sun shining on the mountains. I'm like, this is my day, and so I go back to the other hospital, the rehab hospital, sit down at lunch, and therapist comes in and it's like, well, she gets the news. She goes, what do you think about, walking today? I said, what do you think about walking right now? I'm like, let's get in there now and see what happens. Because, the reality is I had no idea how I was going to walk. No one says, hey, you should be able to walk like this when you walk for the first time. No one says anything. Right.
Right.
So she's pushing me to the therapy room. It's like the same feeling as when you're getting to altitude in that airplane and about to jump out of the door. Right. You're just like, I'm ready. Things are about to happen. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen on the way down. You're going to have to fix what you're going to have to fix, and you have a limited amount of time. So I was like, I don't know if I'm going to fall on my face. I don't know if I have the leg strength, because I saw how weak my arms were from being in the cast for so long.
Yeah.
So it's like 3 months, I had no weight on my legs. And muscle atrophy was like,
Well,
my
it's got
body was
to
just
start. Yeah.
skin hanging off bones. Now, I knew from before it was going to come back as soon as I started exercising. Um, but it wasn't back now, or quite yet. And so she brings me in. There's like parallel bars, and it's like maybe 10 feet long or whatever it is. She puts
Yeah.
the wheelchair in, says, "Okay, time to stand up." So you put your feet on the ground, and you would think there was like 400 pounds of weight, like a back squat that I was doing, because my legs were shaking uncontrollably just from trying to stand up.
Oh, I bet.
So, oh yeah. So I finally stand up, and you like pop your hips out, and you're fully stand up, and you're like, oh, this is what it's like to be 5'10" again. Uh, and I could finally see out of the window of the therapy room, because I could, in a wheelchair you can never see out the window,
Oh,
and
wow. Yeah.
and then you're like, this is the first time I could see out the window. And of course, it was a view of 470, the highway.
Oh,
So I was
great.
like, oh, there was nothing to look at the whole time, but whatever. It got me to stand up the first time. So
Right.
then she goes, okay, time to walk. So, each step, and it's just like you're taking like these micro steps. You're trying to keep, your feet underneath your body, almost like you're walking
Yeah.
on ice.
Right. Right.
And
And
you're taking,
you're holding yourself up basically on these parallel bars, correct?
well, my arms were so weak I couldn't hold myself
Couldn't
up
even do
anyway.
that. All right.
So they were
Right.
almost like if I fell over sideways, I would like crash into it. But I wasn't strong enough to pull myself up anyway, so it
Right,
was
but you had some
useless.
guide rails there, right? Okay.
Right, right. So yeah, so I only could fall front and back. I couldn't fall sideways,
Yeah.
or I could, but it would catch me. So I take like, let's say it was 6 or 7 steps, whatever it was. And, your legs are shaking uncontrollable, and you're just like going so slow. And so you get to the end, they put the wheelchair in, move me to the back, do it again. And so I finish up with that. So the therapist is wheeling me back. She says, this is the first day. You haven't walked in 3 months. We can't push you. You can't do this 10 times. We have to be on the safe side. I said, okay. So she wheeling me back to the room. So the therapist that's wheeling me back to the room is the one that gave me the crazy look when I said I was going to walk out of here. So
Right.
she goes, she's pushing me back and says, Jason, I thought you were going to be happier when you walked for the first time. Because I wasn't I was just like, I thought I walked terribly. I was just like, that wasn't great. But
Yeah.
you got to be a harsh judge if you want to get to where you want to be. It's like patting yourself on your back's not going to get to me where I want to be. It's like, this is just day one. I'm getting better from here. So I was like, and she said, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've never seen anybody with all the injuries you had and the amount of time you couldn't put any weight on your legs, just get up and walk like you did. And I thought, man, what do those other people look like? Because I didn't feel like I walked well at all.
Right.
And I said to her, I said, well, my goal is not to take a couple steps. I said, my goal is to walk out of here on the last day. And that was the first time I mentioned walking since that first day when I said this was my goal. And
Right.
she was real quiet for the rest of the push back to my room at the end of the hall. And I was like, maybe she's starting to believe what I said was going to happen.
Right.
And so a week goes by, and it's time to, and actually, if so, the week goes by, they want to discharge me after 3 days of walking. And walking, I'm walking with, so you progress from that apparatus to here's a walker, and you're trying to do a walker, and then eventually you're, doing crutches and things like that. So they tried to release me after 3 days. I said, no, I want to stay here for another week. As bad as I wanted to go home, I thought to myself, if they bring home care or a home therapist, they'll come in 1 hour twice a week. So
Mm.
the way my training mentality works is I was like, I get 3.5 hours of a day with therapists if I stay here for 7 more days. And I'm doing the
Right.
calculation in my head. That's equal to how many weeks if someone comes into my home and just comes in 2 hours a week. I was like, no, if I stay here for another week, with that amount of training, I'm going to make that amount more progress if I just do that. So I was like, what do you think about me just staying here for, can you convince them to stay for another week? Because of all that much more training, I'm going to be that much further along if I'm with you for another week. So they
And
convinced the
this is all insurance that's dictating this program, right?
100%.
Yeah.
The story with the insurance, what they told me early on, it's all a game. They say as long as you show improvement every single week, they're more likely to keep approving you to stay in therapy. If you don't in your egress, well, then they're probably going to send you home. So
Mm.
the back of your mind is like, that's like, well, that's, you get better a little bit every week and I'll prove that I could stay there. But you're right. The pressure is always that the insurance company is going to send you home whenever they feel like sending you home, not when you want to go home in whatever state you're in.
Yeah, there's your negative reinforcement. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Because it's like they make it so much more uh, stressful than it needs to be. Because every time, so I was in 4 different hospitals along the way, each time you would only find out you were leaving the next hospital maybe a day ahead of time, maybe two. And they would say, okay, you have the choice of these 3 hospitals within your medical insurance. And, luckily my parents were there the whole time. They were retired and got to stay with me, which was a huge
Mm.
blessing. They were able to go and check out those 3 hospitals and say, okay, we think based on us walking around, because they're not doctors either, that this seems like the best hospital for you. But it was just like, why didn't you tell me 5 days ago so they could leisurely look at these hospitals and interview these hospital administrators to figure out where I need to go? And
Yeah.
I realized not everybody gets that opportunity where their parents can stay with them the whole time and do all this work for them. For most people, probably they were just going to get shipped wherever you know they were told to get shipped next.
Yeah, I mean, how much, Google research can you do on your own when your hands don't work? And, you wouldn't gotten anywhere trying to research where you wanted to go next without their help.
Yeah. And besides my parents going there and talking to the administrators, like, well, this seems like a good place. I mean, there's no chips of paint coming down off the walls or something like that. Like, how are they going to judge it? I mean, they're not doctors, they're medical professionals, but they do their best to get me in the place I need to go. Um, but so I got that extra week, they approve it. I'm like, nice. And so I get that much more therapy and that much walking in that time. It also
Yeah.
builds up your confidence as well, because when I remember on that day two, they're having me try, there's like a set of like 4 steps. They want to see how I can go up steps for the first time. And they're holding on to me and everything. And like my knee buckles from just the pressure of standing on a step. And it humbles you right away of going, man, if I was home and someone wasn't holding on to my belt that they put around your waist to hold you up, like I would have just crashed and fell down. It's like, would that break my pelvis? Would that break my leg again? Would that break
Yeah.
anything else again? So you're nervous about that because when you go home, essentially you're on your own for the most part. I mean, you can call 911, I guess, if something goes wrong, but that doctor's not down the hall where you could just hit the button and someone shows up and goes, hey, something doesn't feel right in my body. Because that happened a bunch of times too, where, muscles start getting turned on and, um, there's huge tightness in my diaphragm and preventing me from like taking full breaths and like out of nowhere, and then it would kind of go away. And like, just like when you're at home, like who are you going to call other
Yeah, and
than,
I'm sure also you don't have the, ability to judge at that point whether what you're feeling is muscle soreness, from muscles that haven't been used in a long time, or if this is a re-injury that needs to be addressed right away.
oh, 100%? Or is like, is that an organ going something wrong and it just tightened up the muscle as part of
Yeah.
the whole system? You're like, I don't know. So yeah, a week happens. Week later, I get a finished training. They're like giving me my marching orders. Like, yeah, this is your last day, and then I get up and put the crutches. But at that point, I already went from the walker to crutches within that week. And I put the crutches underneath my arms. I walk all the way out of the hospital, all the way to the car where my dad, had the car parked, um, like I told him I was going to do. And it was time to go home. And it was really time to go to work. And then it was like 8 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week of rehab, because it was just like, I've designed my own program. Because that's the other weird
Yeah.
thing about it too. Like, you could take exercises they do, but no one like they don't have time to like build your program. So I took all the knowledge I had from years of exercise and training and things like that, and I just built up this entire training program of what I was going to do to come back from what all these injuries. Incorporated what they had taught me, but and all
Right.
find things that I could do on my own, that I just done before. I was doing it on a limited basis, but progressive resistance, accommodation,
Right.
all those kinds of principles I learned over the years of exercise were all incorporated into doing this. So I was extremely lucky that I had that base of knowledge that I could apply to rehabilitation myself.
Yeah, and plus you understood the concept of designing a training plan, whether it's done for you by a coach or even on your own. And now what's great is it's almost like you're a pro athlete. You've got all the time in the world, basically. I mean, obviously you got to deal with your daily house, day-to-day living kind of stuff, but at the same time,
Yeah.
it's like you could really focus on, I have, 6 hours or, big chunk of time to actually execute this training plan that you had.
Yeah, I always joke that I was like a professional athlete, but I didn't have a professional sport, because the
Yeah.
disability payments kept rolling in, and
Well, now you are a professional then. All right, you're getting paid.
yeah, they were paying me to work out. But yeah, and I kind of thought about I always said everything is rehab, right? So going and cooking your food, standing on your feet was rehab. Going to the food store to get to shop, because it's like all of a sudden, your crutches are uh in the cart, and your hands are on the cart, and you're walking, and you don't think anything of it normally, but when you're limited to how long you could walk, you're also calculating all these things of like, well, how, if I get stuck in the middle of an aisle and I don't feel like I can walk anymore, what am I going to do? Or, so I used everything. It was all part of the exercise program, just
Yeah,
doing daily activities. Or you think of like, how am I, you would do exercises to for flexibility, and you're like, what happens if I can't get off the ground? And you're just like, you have your phone
right,
like sitting there, like, well, just in case really something happens. I mean, I have my phone and I could call someone, but like things that never go through your mind unless I got injured come to your mind of,
right,
well, what happens if that happens? Because it was so easy, these things before. Or it's like you're sitting on the couch and you're thinking, okay, you would get up a million times for a drink or something else, and you're fine getting back like in normal life. But then you're like, this is really hard to get up from the couch. I'm going to think of the three things I need to do now and get them done, so I don't have to
right.
get up
So
three
it's one
different
trip, right?
times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I know when I've had some of my surgeries, I learned pretty quickly I just wore a backpack even around the house. That way I could just throw everything in the backpack and, carry it with me wherever I'm going so I didn't have to make multiple trips. In fact, it
oh,
came
yeah.
really handy. It was funny. One time, my parents answer to most things as hors d'oeuvres. Yeah, anything goes bad, hors d'oeuvres. And so one day I'd had I think it was one of my knee surgeries, and there's the doorbell rings, and this is it's the middle November. It's cold and snowy, and the doorbell rings, and I go out there, and there's a box sitting on the front step. And it's from igourmet.com. It's a box full of hors d'oeuvres from my parents. And I looked at this box, and it's like, well, what the hell do I do? My hands are on crutches. I can't bring this box in the house. So basically, I went outside, I cut the box open, and I just took all the stuff out of the box and put it in my backpack so I could go ahead and carry it back inside. Left the box sitting out on the step there, but it's like, yeah, you improvise in a lot of interesting ways, things that you just don't even think about. Sure, my parents, as well intentioned as they were, never thought about, yeah, how the hell is he going to get this box inside?
Right. But why would they? Because you're right. You have best intentions, but like they're not the ones that have to use crutches or all this other things, because you don't think about all the steps other people have to take through,
Right.
to get through whatever they do. There's similar when I would go to the grocery store. So so I have the cart. I go check out, and I check out. I'd have like a 5,000 cubic inch backpack that's used for like
Right.
multi-day, and I put everything in the back because I'm on crutches. So I
Yeah.
put everything in the back, put that on my back, and I have my crutches and go back out to my car. And the people in the grocery store, they're like, "Are you walking all the way home like that?" And I said, "No, no, no, I'm just walking to my car. Don't worry about it." They're like, "Will you help you?" I was like, "No, no, no, I got it." But yeah, and you always try to make you don't. People are extremely helpful, but I was like, "No, I don't, I won't help. This is part of rehab. So just let me go through it." This is
Yeah,
getting me
you
strong.
know what else is part of it? This is kind of a funny story. I traveled one time with my leg in a cast after one of my surgeries. I had to fly to Florida. I think it was my grandmother's 90th birthday or something, and so I wanted to be there for that. And they wheel you through the airport, and it's amazing. They take you down through the catacombs of the airport. I mean, there's a whole nother level of Denver International Airport that people don't know about, and it's kind of cool. You get to bypass all the crowds and everything. But one thing I learned in that wheelchair is that everybody also thinks you're deaf. I don't know if you noticed this or not, but like they will lean really close to you and go, "Is there anything we can do to help you?" And I'm like, "Just my leg. I can hear it just fine, but I don't know why." And it's really funny, and you wouldn't know that unless you actually got hurt yourself.
Yeah, and it well intentioned as people are too. Like for my parents, so they bring me home and at the hospital after the hospital, and they're living with me, and I just like, you guys have done a tremendous amount. You've been here this entire time in the hospital. I was like, I proved that I can shower by myself. I proved that I can do these basic things on my own now that I'm home. I was like, I think you guys have to get back to your normal life. And part of that was, well, I had a tremendous amount of appreciation for everything they did for me, obviously, and they were amazing. But they're so helpful that they would see me struggle getting off the couch to get a drink or to cook something. I knew I had to do that as part of rehab as the
Yeah,
beginning stages. And they were like, can we get something for you? Can we do this for you? And I would say, I have to do this myself, because if I don't do this myself, I will never get better. And I
right,
realize you guys are trying to help me, but I have to do this. And I had to have them leave because, realize when you're by yourself, you're both at your high, you are most susceptible to depression and doubting yourself, but also when you can do it yourself, no one else is pushing you except yourself. So you
right,
can get to these amazing levels by yourself. I knew if you want to really truly test your own motivation, I had to be there by myself, waking up and like, are you going to start training it as soon as you wake up and start doing your exercise and doing 8 hours a day and all these other kinds of things along the way. And I knew how my mind worked, and I knew I had to get to that. And like, now you're truly motivated because you're doing it by yourself. No one's asking you. You're writing the program, you're doing the
right,
exercises. But that was a mentality built over years too. It wasn't like I magically came upon that. It was just like a triathlon or endurance mindset of like, you're done with one workout. Well, what's workouts next? Like, you don't get to
yeah,
do one workout in a day. It's like, now you get to the next workout. Now you get to
right.
this. And it's like, that's how it works. So
No, that's great. And I think a lot of us, I know I would be one, be jealous of the ability. Hey, great, I can go do something else. I mean, I always said like my ideal weekend day like this, if I wasn't wounded myself right now, would be to play three different sports. Not because I'm a triathlete, but maybe it would be like go for a run, play basketball, and play tennis or something like that. I mean, that's the ideal day, three different sports in a day. Or here in Colorado right now, you could ski and golf in the same day, and maybe throw in something else too.
yeah,
So let's change course a little bit here. So
sure.
before you got injured, you were in a job that you were, for want of a better term, a workaholic. You were just totally focused on the job, really finding yourself. Very little life outside of working. And obviously, that perspective ended up changing a lot because of this accident. And whether it was through divine intervention or not, it was a sea change for you in terms of how you approach your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wouldn't say you could say workaholic. I wasn't like voluntarily working all those hours. It was just had to do to get what I needed to get done was the
Yeah,
reality. So I wasn't like, gosh, yes, 12 hours and I get X amount more dollars. It wasn't like that at all. It was a salary job. So you're like in all these extra hours, it's like I have to get this done because when you're in the financial industry, the reality is money's on the line all the time. You can't just say,
right.
oh, just do this a couple days later. It's like, no, you have to do this, whatever you're doing now. And yeah, it wore me down a lot. Like I said, I went from, you know, I'd done bunches of Ironman triathlons. So let's just say, and not arrogant, you're probably in the 1% of fittest people in the world, probably when you're doing
Yeah,
Ironman triathlon,
sure.
let's just say, or maybe 2%, whatever it is, but you're pretty fit. And I went from that to, I remember going to the doctor after a couple of years of doing all these hours at work. I get blood tests and I'm like pre-hypertension, I'm pre-diabetes. And I was just like, I just went from that to like, these health indicators are horrible.
Yeah.
It's scary, right? Because there's a history in my family on my mother's side that people dropping dead from heart attacks in their 40s.
Ooh.
Um, she would say as a kid, she was like, yeah, Uncle somebody, there was somebody, some kind of funeral my parents were going to all the time that someone, dropped dead of a heart attack. And then that becomes even more real when you start, you're in your 40s and you're just like, oh my, this could like lead to this. And the stress, so like I'm feeling like heart pain, tightness in my chest, things like that. I'm like, this isn't normal. Like you're not getting a full night's sleep. You're waking up looking at the ceiling, trying to think of all the things you need to do. And in the loss of that, you're just like, I'm not spending the time with people I love, I care about. I feel like I lost purpose in life because a lot of times, for a long time, I think endurance sports was kind of, it was a purpose, that where I had something to do. That was more the thing I was passionate about. And
Right.
I kind of lost all that because I was working so many hours. Like I was trying to train for races, and it would, after like 5 or 6 weeks, it would always fall apart because I'm just like, here, you're getting home at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. I left at 5 in the morning to go to work. I'm just like, I'm supposed to do a 2 hour run and then immediately go to bed to maybe get like 4 hours of sleep. And it's just, I'm like failing and failing and failing, and I'm just
Yeah.
miserable. And so yeah, I really came out with a more purpose in life. I became had a much better perspective on life after the accident, and go, this work is sucks you in, because it's the same thing that sucks you into like doing endurance sports and being like, it was the same character trait that allowed me to work all those hours at that job and get through it. It wasn't happy to get through it, but I got through it because I kind of had a mentality to do that. It was like it was a thing about myself, I guess, that I was the most proud about. I could get through anything. I mean, even before the accident, but there's a real dark side to that personality trait,
Yeah.
that it allows you to be hyper focused on something, but forget about a lot of other things in your life.
For
And when
good or
you
for
late,
better. I mean, sometimes it makes you more productive in that one area, but obviously
correct.
operating in with blinders on, I guess you'd say, just because you're not aware of what else is going on and things that may be quite important that you're just ignoring.
Yeah. People maybe you're ignoring, or loved ones,
Yeah.
and it kind of maybe step back and go, yeah, that's a tremendous trait, and you shouldn't get away from that because that makes you who you are. But you
Right.
have to recognize the dark side of that, and where sometimes that pulls you to not being present in other relationships because you're so focused on one thing
Right.
that you're not focusing on other parts in life. And laying in that bed for all those weeks kind of said, yeah, this is a character flaw that you have to recognize and you have to get better at. You want to get better at it, because feel the regret that you laid in that bed and felt like that is a horrible feeling. I never want to feel like that again.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, so yeah, that 100 miles an hour getting things accomplished has its good and its bad. You just have to recognize that.
Right. So post accident, post rehab, I mean, is it more of excuse me, flipping a switch into now looking more outwardly, so to speak, or was it more of a gradual change?
Yeah. Well, it always seems to come back to foundation, or elements of your life, or things you're used to doing. It was similar to anything else. You start doing a little bit at a time. You find a way to do something you didn't do before and continue to repeat that over and over and over again. Now you do it 30 times. Now it's not foreign to you to do that thing anymore.
Right.
It's like, a lot of times, like as far as like expressing vulnerability, or expressing how much you care about someone, it was something I thought, but I would process it internally, but never necessarily say that to them. And so they didn't know. I said, you need to express that out loud to that person and let them know how important you are. So it started with, get out of the hospital, start writing letters to people, nurses, doctors that helped me along the way, my family members that were there. Uh, so I was like, start doing that, because they need to know how important they were in your life, or are in your life.
Yeah.
And so that's how it kind of started, and it continued, over and over. So now it's more like something that comes to my head, and I go, well, you just thought how important that person was in your life because you just had a wonderful conversation with one of your friends. You had coffee with them. They don't know that you had a great conversation. And I would go home and go, I'm going to send them a text message and tell them how important that conversation just was, and how much I value the time we spent together. So it becomes a habit, just like it wasn't before you created a habit. And so it is little by little. And then sometimes you think back over time and you go, here's where I was when I was laying in that. I just had a recent thing where it was almost like a flashback of that
Really?
time, and you relive it again, that low moment, and you go, how have I changed? And at first, because I'm the way I think of all the things you didn't do, but then I start listing all the things I did do to change, and I go,
Yeah.
okay, I am a different person than I was before, and I'm glad. Um, but yeah, it is a gradual change to do it. But the more you make it a habit, the more likely you will do it. Um, yeah, and you're glad for it. And there's another thing. I don't know if you've ever seen this. It's called "This Is Water." It's David Foster Wallace is an author, and unfortunately passed away, I think in 2010. But he gave a graduation speech to Kenyon College, and so part of the speech, I mean, it's 20 minutes long, but a small part is he talks about that you never get enough of the things that you value. So if you value, let's say, education, you could have 3 PhDs, but you never think you're educated enough.
Right.
If volunteering is important, you never volunteer enough. And I realized, and I hadn't seen it in a couple of years, that change and the change that I wanted to make when I was laying in that hospital, that I never wanted to be that person. I was questioning myself, almost 5 years later, was that I didn't think I was doing enough. It was that same mentality. You wanted to change, but no, however much you change, you're never going to value and say you thought you changed enough to be a better person than you were.
Mm.
And you kind of in that mind going, because you're beating yourself up going, did I change enough? Have I made enough impact on people's life that I said I wanted to make after getting out of that hospital and giving myself a new, being given a new purpose and the gift of the story of the accident, because it allowed me to connect to people in a way I wouldn't have ever been able to connect to before, because I had to go through my toughest time in my life and come back from it before I could help someone else going through their toughest time in their life. And you go, oh, I'm never going to feel like I changed enough, no matter how much. But you have to take a real assessment of how much you changed and go and give yourself credit for
Yeah.
what you've done. But say you still could get better,
Yeah.
and
Well,
that's kind of the
it's like
mentality.
when you're training for a race, nobody ever goes into a race and says, I am perfectly trained. I did everything in my training that I was hoping I was going to accomplish. You basically have to go into it with what you got. You have no
Right.
choice. Race day came, and doesn't matter, if you did that 20-mile run you were planning on or didn't do it, you got to go with what you got. And kind of the same thing here in that you decided to start getting the word out, and it really didn't matter that you were, quote, ready for it. Nobody's ever going to be totally ready because it's a process, as you say. So at some point, though, you made that decision that even though I may not be ready for this, I'm going to go out there and start talking about my story and talking about the changes and the impacts that I can make. And of course, you've done some speaking, and like any speaker, just like training for a race, you're not necessarily prepared for that first time. You just have to go with what you got, and knowing that each time you speak, it's probably going to get a little better, a little easier, and so on, right?
Oh yeah, you get the nerves and say you question yourself. You go, yeah, like you said, similar to racing. You're like, is this message strong enough? Should I be up here? Am I the expert on something? Like, and all of that comes yeah, you question yourself, you get that nerves, you're like, am I worthy to do this? And then sometimes you get feedback, and someone, you meet someone who's about to go in cancer treatment. I mean, I've done book signings, or somebody who's question, yeah, a parent just passed away and they thought they had given up at the end of life, and they're trying to come to terms with that. And you meet all these people, and you would never have met them and had these conversations unless you were willing to go out and speak, or write a book, or admit to your own vulnerabilities and things you questioned in your own life. Um, because I had never done that before the accident. I kept everything in, and it was to my detriment to do that. And I said, after going through this, like, no, other people are struggling just like you, and in whatever, you know, reason they're struggling, talking about it, and admitting your vulnerabilities is helps other people. And that's what you need to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you mentioned in one of your speaking gigs there, or maybe more than one, where people have come up to you. And I don't think you realize, you start speaking, you think, well, is anybody really listening? Is anybody really getting anything out of this? And people come up to you and start sharing their own stories. I know in a previous life, I spent 22 years as a counselor at the Denver Rape Crisis Center here. And for most of it, I was the only male counselor. But I would go out and do speaking gigs to Rotary clubs, Kiwanis clubs, chambers of commerce, whatever. And it was always amazing to me when you're looking at the room, you're not sure if anybody really is on, very sympathetic, even paying attention. And then somebody will come up to you and say, "Hey, I went through this sexual assault myself. I've never talked to anybody about it before, but you've inspired me to at least talk about it and maybe start seeking some help." I mean, I'm sure you've had some of those kind of incidences, as you mentioned in your book, where people have come up and said, "Wow, that really helped. And now I feel like I have a clearer path on which way I need to go to continue my recovery."
Yeah, people have to understand that they're not alone in the world. That talking about your struggles will make you stronger. And I think people also have to understand that they're far stronger and can get through amazingly situations that you don't think you can get through just with the strength they already have inside. I think so often we're so fast to say that someone else is strong or has some kind of quality that you want or covet, that the reality is you have that strength inside. You have all these things you've gone through in your life to build that foundational knowledge and things that can help you get through difficult situations, and you just have to give yourself permission to say that you're strong and you're going to get through it.
Right.
And it's okay to ask for help. You don't have to take it all on yourself. And that's a big lesson that I learned, because even laying in a hospital, and I was like, I hated help. I always felt like I needed to do everything on my own. And
Right.
at some point they said, you can't move, you can't do all this stuff. You have to accept help. And when I started accepting help was when I started coming
That's
back.
in progress. Oh yeah, I mean, as you said, somebody had to bend your elbow for you. You couldn't do it on your own very well, certainly, or not as well. And same thing with the mental aspect. Sometimes those people are the ones who have to bend that muscle in your brain, between your ears, so to speak, before you can start working on that more yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So you've gotten out there speaking. I know you've mentioned you've gone to various churches, and um, obviously, you've written this book, which is another great step. Very difficult undertaking. I totally get it. You're kind of, laying low a lot of your emotions. Anybody I know who's written, say, a memoir or something's very personal, such as this, talk about how what a wrestling match it is. How draining it is. It's almost like training for another marathon, ultra marathon, triathlon, whatever. Um, but I was wondering as I was reading that, like, why not bring that message outside the churches? I mean, I know you're a very devout man, fantastic.
Mhm.
Obviously that's a great audience for you. And although you found it was difficult in a lot of cases to even get in front of a lot of congregations, but
Yeah.
I think this is a message, maybe through this book will help, speaking to a much wider audience as well. It's a great message you have to share.
Yeah, no, it is for everyone. Yeah, there certainly faith, belief in God and all those things definitely got me through this, but it's certainly not um, a book just for someone who's a Christian or someone who believes in God. I mean,
No.
those foundational things I did to come back. Some of them are faith based, and a lot of it's not faith based, and
Yeah.
it was racing or things I had gone through in my life that build up um, to how I did come back from it. So yeah, it's not certainly just for a certain segment, because let's say we all struggle through life in whatever it may be. It could be whether it's a car accident, mental health, all these other things, and that's one thing we all have in common as human beings. And that's not based on your religion. That's not based on race, creed, sexual orientation, any of that. We all struggle, and if we all have a kind, word or listening to other people, we can get through, incredibly difficult things. So no, I don't think it's just for a certain group. It's for all people, and I'll come to speak to anybody who wants me to come and speak.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
show up. So and I think one thing you struggle with, you had mentioned, sometimes it's hard to get, speaking engagements in the beginning, because the reality is people in our society are so skeptical that people want something for what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what's behind it? Is he going to try to sell us financial products after he speaks about his survival story? I say that because I've gotten that before, because I was like, yes, I work in the financial story. One, I don't sell anything. That's not my job. But
Right.
I was just like, no, no, no. The end game is to help people going through difficult times in their life. I learned lots of lessons from this that are applicable to all kinds of things. It's not that you don't have to run into the side of a building for these lessons to apply. It could be anything you're going through, because the way to come back are similar strategies to get back from where you are now to hopefully where you want to get to be. And I think unfortunately our society is at a place like that where they think, well, what's in it for you? Well, what's in it for me is I went through a terrible thing and I want to help other people and spread this message of hope, because people need hope. We see all these terrible things happening in society, and
Yeah.
I want to help somebody. That's my purpose in life. That's why I got saved, because I have a second chance and I want to do something with that second chance to spread the word in a way I would not have been qualified or understood before I went through the accident myself. So if that's the reason where somebody's like, why are you doing this? That's the reason.
Yeah. And it's always funny to me when I hear so many stories about people who've been through severe accidents who say later on, like, I'm so glad this happened to me. And most of us are like, huh? You really want to go through like the ordeal you went through? But without fail, they all say, yeah, but what a different perspective it gave me. What a great way for me to be able to share a message that I would not have had without this accident. It's very counterintuitive to a lot of folks, but it's very interesting how that works.
Oh, I would say 100% is the best thing that ever happened to me. Because
Yeah,
I go, look, what would have happened? Where would I be if this didn't happen? Right?
right.
Maybe I would have had that heart attack. Maybe I would still be in that same stressful situation that I was before, and not it's so closed off and not sharing things. Um, so yeah, you get a tremendous perspective. And I think the other thing is, when you go and had to rebuild my body like I had, you don't take anything for granted. If I go out and use my body, I was like, I'm lucky to be able to use it like I'm using it now. Because I knew how hard it was to walk for that first time. I knew what it was like when my arms wouldn't work. I remember when I was laying in that bed. So when you get up, if I go for a run, I'm like, well, it wasn't as fast as I thought it would be, or I didn't, or I had to walk for a couple of minutes during that run. I was like, yeah, you weren't able to run a couple of years ago. You didn't know if you would ever be able to run again.
Yeah.
Like you're just like you kind of brush that off and go, yeah, I'm pretty lucky. I get to see those mountains with the sun shining off them. I wasn't able to see that. I didn't think I was ever going to be able to see that again. I mean, the gratefulness, and I think you just see more things that you might have passed over before. Acts of kindness, little things that people are doing that, not necessarily for you or kindness to other people, that you recognize that I was going too fast and not seeing all those wonderful things, that now I recognize some of those little things that it wouldn't have maybe registered before, that I do now.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I know one of my favorite stories that you told in the book kind of reminds me, David Clark, who started this podcast, often talked about how you might run into somebody who's really angry, who you think, I want nothing to do with that guy. But if you actually take the time and listen to them about, maybe you'll find out why they're angry, and maybe find out a little bit more about who that person is, and realize that maybe that person who was a jerk to you was just having a bad day. It's not that they are a jerk. It was just they were just having a bad episode. And maybe if they got to talk about that a little bit and listen to them, it might change things around. And you talked about that ambulance driver that you had, who you started off with on the wrong foot entirely. And after very rough beginning, you turned around and because everybody's always focused on you, all your people giving you care in the hospitals, the ambulance people, the therapists, whatever, they're all focused on you, and they're always taken aback when somebody says, "What? How was your day?" And you kind of did the same thing with that ambulance driver, and next thing you know, you guys were having a great conversation, and he became a great ally for you instead.
Yeah, yeah. We have to be careful that we're like the expert of our point of view on everything in the world, right? Because we
Yeah,
see something from our vision. And yeah, I think it's important to take other perspectives into consideration. And like you said, I had an interaction with somebody on the bus just a couple months ago on the way to work, and he got mad because I we're getting off the bus, and I just stood up, and it was you know like you do, as just like getting off a bus or a plane or
yeah,
whatever else. He got mad because I stood up in front of him and didn't like sprint off the bus, and we are waiting for other people to get up in front of us, how you normally unload from the bus, and he starts kind of cursing at me and saying, move faster, you're this. And I was just I caught myself and said, this he couldn't be this mad because I just stood up to get off the bus and he didn't magically able to sprint from the back to the front. my first initial thought was like, well, if you sat at the front, you'd get off quicker. But I figured that wasn't poking him at that point wasn't really going to get
Right.
anywhere and make his day better or anything. And I caught myself. I was like, okay, he's obviously mad about something else. Maybe he's in a breakup, his child's sick, or there could be a million reasons why
Right.
he's mad. He just wanted to take it out on somebody because he's mad this morning. And I just said,
Exactly. Yeah.
I said, I'm sorry you're having a bad day. I hope the rest of your day is getting better. We're going to get off this bus in a minute. And,
And then
you know,
what did you do after he then gave you a bloody lip?
no, he didn't
Kidding.
punch me. He didn't punch me. But he sort of calmed down because I didn't I think what he could have wanted was that aggressive reaction back, right? He's mad. It's easier to be mad at me if I get mad at him back because now he has a reason to really be mad at me because I just said something mean back to him. I
Oh
said,
yeah, but
but
yeah.
that's the
Old me would have been, you goddamn Red Sox fan. I know that's why you're pissed because the team sucks.
but giving him the opposite is what calmed him
Right.
down because I said,
Yep.
I'm sorry you're having a bad day. This, and he did calm down because he didn't know what to say because he started mumbling. I could hear him because he was standing inches behind me
Right.
because he couldn't come back and say something mean to me again because I'm like, well, he was just nice to me, even though I was lashed out at him. So
Had a way to
maybe
piss him off. Yeah.
yeah, it was either a way to make him happy. Yes, so I could say also make him madder, but he
Right.
couldn't come back and say something negative again because I'm just like, it, you're this is not that big a deal. But I knew there had to be something else. He couldn't be that mad, or unless he had a real anger issue, and I guess that could be possible too. But
Yeah, that's true.
I wasn't going to try to psychoanalyze him in 2 minutes like that psychiatrist had to
Right,
do to
right.
me in 2 minutes. And I didn't go to school for to be a psychiatrist either. So, but yeah, I think just being aware of other things that other people are going through in life and how they are presenting themselves to you. There may be a reason beyond just their anger at you.
Very true. So, was one thing in your you did not mention in your book, because so we I probably don't want to give away much more of your book here. We'd like people to actually pick it up and read it, but you didn't talk much about your new perspective on your job that before was consuming your life so much,
Sure.
and how your perspective now is different. While because you didn't switch jobs, you're still doing the same thing as before, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So here's the difference. It's that you realize you have a purpose beyond what that job is. You it's your responsibility, not anyone else's, to figure out how you still execute that purpose beyond your job, which to me is helping other people,
Yeah.
because you're always going to be dragged in, whatever job you have, you're going to be dragged in all these kinds of different directions that you can't control. There's only some things you can control. You can't control everything. How, there's a new client, it's passed down to you. And you have to figure out a way with all those distractions to still live the purpose that you want to live outside of that job. The
Yeah.
job has a purpose because I still have to eat, I still have to live, I still have to, have a roof over my head, all those types of things. And that's part of it. But you have to figure out yourself how you're going to rise above those things, put it into perspective. And sometimes you're not going to be balanced. There's days you're going to have to do more hours because that's the way it is. But
Right.
there's a way you need to figure out. So I say is when I wake up every day in the morning and I get dressed, I see that scar that goes from the top of my up to my clavicle all the way down to my waist where they had to open me up and saw me in half. And it reminds me that you have a purpose beyond, more important purpose beyond that job. You need to figure out a way. You live for you live through this for a reason, and you've been
Right.
given a purpose. You need to find a way to get to that purpose every day. And when you have that and that reminder every day, you realize there's a lot other importance. Doesn't mean you don't. It doesn't mean you don't do your job. It doesn't mean you do a bad job. Not what you're supposed to be doing. It's realizing there's a bigger purpose and you need to figure out, however you need to figure it out, you figure it out how to get to that purpose to help other people.
I love it. And face it, every job, maybe people don't realize this, every job is about helping other people. I don't care if you are a financial planner, a doctor, a policeman, a teacher, a fast food worker, you're out there serving other people. That's exactly what the definition of a job is. So once you realize that, obviously you can probably do it better and achieve a lot more satisfaction for yourself than if you're thinking you're just working for a paycheck or whatever it is. You're out there to help other people.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. But yeah, it's understanding just understanding your purpose, and yeah, you're gonna get there's lots of things that are gonna try to pull you off track, and you just gotta keep on pulling yourself back onto track, and realizing that it's easier to like I said, I had lost purpose before that, felt like I lost purpose
yeah,
before that accident. I got it back, and like, no, you got a purpose. It's a lot easier to wake up in the morning, and it's a lot easier, to find a way when you have that purpose beyond what you had before.
absolutely. Well, good. Well, Jason, this has been a great conversation. I don't want to give away the whole book here, so but um, what have we missed that we ought to add into this conversation?
Well, I'd say so. One thing I would like to mention. So every year I have my own holiday. I think I'm mostly the only person that celebrates it, but maybe a couple family members. I call it Coming Back to Life Day, where I celebrate the day that I almost passed away. And every year, what I like to do is do something that the doctor said I wouldn't be able to do uh, when that accident happened. So coming up in June, I'm going to be climbing Mount Ypsilon in Rocky Mountain National Park up a couloir called the Y Couloir. I had done it years ago. Gosh, it's probably 17, 18 years ago when I was into climbing quite a bit. Um, and it'll be the first, the technical climbing with crampons and ice axes and all those kind of things that I haven't used in quite a while, and certainly haven't used since the accident. So that's this year's goal, to stand on top of the summit and once again tell the doctors, well, thank you for doubting me. And we got to the top of this again, and so yeah, working towards that, and getting the fitness back for that, and certainly speaking. So if anyone's out there that like to see me speak, I'm happy to come and speak, whether it's a church, a civic group, any kind of group. I speak to schools, students, things like that. Like I said, I am a Christian, but it doesn't mean there's no pounding on your head to convert or anything like that. But
Or to buy financial products. Yeah.
oh yeah, I don't sell financial products either. But the reality is, my message is of hope and to help people going through difficult situations, because at some point, if you haven't gone through something difficult already, you're going to. I hate to tell you that, but you're going to. And just because you went through one tough thing in your life doesn't mean another thing's just around the corner. When you go through these trials, it just prepares you for the next one. Um, so if you'd like to hear me speak, you go to jasondennen.com, spelled Dennen. Also, my book, 8 Days Till Sunrise, is available there. If you come to my website, I'm happy to put a message in there specifically for you, signature. You also get it on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. But yeah, reach out if you read it and you want to give me feedback or tell me what you're going through. Then I'd love to hear stories of people that are struggling and getting through, or need maybe a positive word of reinforcement to get them over that hump, to get it through that tough time they're going through. So
Oh, that's awesome and very generous of you to do that as well. Um, what was I just going to ask you there? Oh, about the Mount Epsilon hike. Can people join you on that?
it's technical, so you could say hi at the parking lot, I guess, but it's going to start about 2 a.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m. to hike in. So it's not really something you could join, just
Hey,
because
people in Colorado are nuts. They'd be happy to do that, I bet.
I guess, but there's it's technical ice and rock and things like that. So it's not something unless you or something proficient in climbing, that you just be able to do. But yeah, for those days, as far as, because I have a good friend that's climbing with me, it's a
Okay.
very introspective day of,
All
because
right.
not only that day do I do something to prove that the doctors are wrong, but it's also I relive the entire day of that accident,
Hmm.
of whether it's on a hike or something like that, of the day I woke up and I'm running, and what the accident was like, and all those other things. So it's in some ways, I say it's obviously not public because I just said I'm doing this climb, but in some ways it is extremely private and personal to relive that day. The emotional turmoil that you go through when you're reliving that day, it's pretty heavy. Um, And also the other thing is that mountain's very important to me because, well, I have some adventures on that mountain. I almost got struck by lightning once, and I had a hold break on a rock climb. I almost took a 1,000 foot fall to my death 17 or 18 years ago as well.
Right.
And in addition to that, there's also a family memorial of people in my immediate family that have passed. There's a rock memorial up there that I built
Oh,
years
wow.
ago. Um, that is My mom actually just passed away in August, so
Oh,
it's
that's
her time
yeah,
to join the memorial, and
yeah.
so it's a very important place to me beyond just climbing it and getting to the top. That mountain has a lot of meaning to me because I almost passed away once or twice on that mountain from the broken rock hold and almost being struck by lightning. But in addition, there's that memorial that means a lot to me. That's up there that I'll be visiting. It's hard to get to where that even memorial is, but
Well,
that's
which is
sort of
probably a good thing because that way it's still there, right?
right, right. So
Yeah.
so that's part of the whole climb too. It's to yeah, to celebrate my mom's life as well.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. Yeah, I mentioned that too. Jason, David Clark, somebody put a beautiful etched metal plaque on the trail up Hope Pass in the Leadville 100 to him, which is a very appropriate place for it. And it's been a persistent mystery. Nobody knows what happened to it. It disappeared. Somebody took it down. We don't know if it was the Forest Service or some individual. So it's a good thing you have that memorial in a well concealed place. And yeah, don't take other people there. It's a very good idea. So I'm sorry very much to hear about your mom, but
Oh,
I
thanks.
understand how special a hike that's going to be for you. So when you said it was your own holiday, I was thinking you were going to talk about Festivus or something, but oh, but no, that's
It's for the
very
rest of us.
yeah, for the rest of us, right? For the rest of the Dennons, but it's a very reverent day, so to speak. So I hope it goes very well for you there. And where can people find you out on social media, Jason?
Sure. Instagram at JWD Boulder, spelled like the city.
Yep.
Um, you can find me there. You have Facebook. I guess there's a couple Jason Dennons, but I'm the one. There's a triathlon picture on there, so you'll know it's
Yeah.
me. But yeah, and then jasondennen.com. If you go to jasondennen.com, that has all my social media links there. So you can, that's probably the easiest way to find the social media links to connect to me. So I love people to connect to me and join and see where I'm speaking and to connect to people and help them through their tough times. So I would love if people connected.
Yeah, well, you've had certainly your share of adventures. You were a nightmare to your family well before the big accident happened, apparently. But yeah, no, I'm sure you'd be great for a lot of folks to relate to there. So, and you do things like this. So, deeply appreciative of your joining me here today. We'll have to get on a run or a hike or something here when we're both physically able here. I'm kind of on the shelf at the moment, but hopefully we'll be getting back to it very soon. But yeah, we'll have to hit the hills there. I won't do the ice climbing part with you. I'll leave that to you. But again, thank you so much for being here. Again, it's 8 days till sunrise. As a book editor and a proofreader myself, I will tell you, I only found maybe one mistake in your entire book, which, grammatical or punctuation, I forget what it was. I think maybe two, but still, that's very impressive. Even in well-edited books, I usually find several. So you did a good job with the book. But besides that, it was well written. I enjoyed it a lot, and I hope other people will too. It's great motivation. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. It was an honor.
You bet. All right. Well, Jason, have a great rest of your weekend. And hold on, oops. I'm just trying to put on my glasses here and, well, thank you much. And of course, I get the spinning wheel on my computer right now. So it's like, I can't do anything. Oh, come on.